And a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Good Afternoon Ghana here on Metro TV from Astudio Region Accra, the Akuya Bohima Studio. And tonight on the show, I'll be joined on with some three gentlemen. We are talking about taxation in Ghana. What exactly is it? Government, our parliament has approved 3 new taxes. We're going to be talking about this and some other issues when it comes to Ghana's economy. Stay with us and welcome to Good Afternoon Ghana. All right, and so once again, a big good afternoon to you wherever you are watching this from. This is Good Afternoon Ghana. And so on the show today, we will be looking at government's new taxes. Now, Parliament has passed the 3 tax bills which were tabled before it as part of government's measures to generate more revenue. Now, the bills, namely the Income Tax Amendment Bill, the Excise Duty Amendment Bill, and the Growth and Sustainability Amendment Bill were passed on Friday evening. Earlier, the government had stated that the revenue bills are needed to help the government complete processes for the about $3 billion IMF deal, as well as improve the revenue situation of the country. Now, the Finance Ministry warned that there could be serious challenges with the country, which may send shocks to the economy if the bills are not passed. However, on Friday, MPs showed up in their numbers to vote following days of deliberation. Now, the House passed the first of the 3 bills, the Excise Duty Amendment Bill 2022, and the third reading stage. That revenue measure is expected to rake in about 400 million Ghana cedi annually. Also, the government hopes to achieve this by imposing a 20% tax on e-smoking and fruit juices, among others. The excise duty was approved after a head count, with the result being 137 for the majority and 136 for the minority. The Income Tax Amendment Bill 2022 was also passed at the third reading stage. Now, the revenue measure is expected to rake in 1.2 billion Ghana cedi annually. It was approved by a voice vote. Lastly, the House passed the Growth and Stability Amendment Bill last year at the third reading stage in Parliament on Friday. Now, this revenue measure is expected to bring in the government's hefty 2.2 billion annually. This bill will impose a 5% levy on profit before tax of the companies and also institutions affected. And economists and analysts are also head of business operations at Deles Finance, Joe Jackson, has been talking. But before that, let's go to Parliament and bring you what the debate was like when the bill was being discussed. Take a look at this.
Often we ask, why are we granting tax exemptions when we need revenue? And we pressed hard for the passage of the Tax Exemptions Act. But I want to emphasize that it does not mean, the passage of the Act does not mean that tax exemptions will not be granted. It's only that there will be greater scrutiny about what is exempted, under what conditions such exemptions will be granted. Now, in this particular case, we went into...
Honourable members, let's get the attention of the honourable member, please.
The Speaker, in this particular case, the country entered into an agreement with the Japanese government through JICA to fund the Phase 2 project of the Temamoto Way.
So one has to pay taxes on both and not one. The Speaker, the only way you can, or the Ghana Revenue Authority will be able to assess those taxes, is to sign on to the international conventions. Over the years, Mr. Speaker, these conventions have been modified. Circumvention rules, for instance, has been changed. Because, Mr. Speaker, over the years, there are times that business owners find clever ways to circumvent the rules. And that is why continuous improvement is important. OECD, working with European countries, have developed new circumvention rules. And there was the need for us to amend these laws to reflect the international regulations. Mr. Speaker, until we sign on to these rules by amending our domestic laws to reflect them, there is no way these companies or these countries will be able to give us this information. Speaker, I think it's in the right order. I am aware that these are common across the world, and obviously countries all over the world are adopting new circumvention rules. It's not an imposition of new tax policy. It is only a compliance measure that will get companies to disclose and to avoid circumventions, as has always been the case in international financial reporting. Speaker, I think we should support it. Thank you.
So let's again take you to Saturday, where Business Operations Director for Deluxe Finance, Joe Jackson, was in the studio and explained what exactly these taxes mean. Take a listen.
So it's important to look at this.
Okay.
The amendment was going to give us 1.29 billion.
Okay.
Now,
Put all of that together.
yes, the amendment was going to give us 1.29 billion.
Okay.
Now, the amendment is going to hit you because if you earn whatever income tax you are going to pay, you would realize that starting from next month, it is going to go up. Yes. Of course, there's the excise duty amendment. That is going to hit at people who are producing, exporting, etc. But the one I want you to be really worried about is the growth and sustainability levy.
Okay.
That's going to give us 2.2 billion. Right? Remember that the excise duty amendment will only give us 450 million. But let's go to this. That's where the problem comes. And the problem is huge. 5% of profit before tax is going to be paid by all these institutions: banks, non-banks, insurance companies, the telcos, the breweries, the inspection companies, the bulk oil distributors, and the oil marketing companies. Now, I want you to remember this. Already, truly, this is the list of the companies that pay the most tax in Ghana. What someone did was to look at the companies that pay the most tax in Ghana and say, on top of whatever tax they are paying, I levy them 5% of all their profit before tax.
Okay.
But the key thing is that there's the law of unintended consequences.
Right.
You've already gone through your domestic debt exchange program. The banks, the non-banks, the insurance companies, they are suffering disproportionately from this domestic debt exchange program, to the point where we are asking for recapitalization. We think some of them may be insolvent. In fact, there have been estimates by certain professionals who even think up to 9 may be insolvent already. And you are levying them another 5% before tax. On top of last week, increasing their capital adequacy ratio from to 14%. There's something wrong here. And we must be seriously concerned about the health of our financial system.
Sector.
But let's go on. Now, the productive sector. We keep talking about the productive sector. What do? We say 1% of all their gross production will be levied. This one is not about profit. 1% of all the value that they produce will be levied. It will affect the mining companies. It will affect upstream oil companies. Maybe we don't feel sympathetic about these companies. But I beg you, this one is the catch. For the rest of you, anybody who is not in this category, whatever you earn, the government is going to take an additional 2.5% of profit before tax. Every single Ghanaian company, every single Ghanaian enterprise, every single Ghanaian sole proprietorship, 2.5%. So let nobody be deceived. This current
This financial, how do you call it?
revenue enhancement,
Right.
is not only from the banks. They are suffering. Maybe me, I have to go and deal with my own issues at Delex. But If you are a paid worker, your income tax is going up. If you are a business, your income tax is going up.
All right, some in-depth analysis there by Joe Jackson. He is the Director for Business Operations at Delex Finance. And I've been joined in the studio by Daniel Osabuti, who is a Senior Lecturer at the Accra University Business Department. Good afternoon to you and welcome to
Good afternoon.
Ghana. Great to have you. It's been a while.
Yeah, good to see you.
Great to see you. And also from the NDC is Elikem Kotoko, my lost brother, in the studio today, the Deputy National Organizer for the National Democratic Congress, NDC, and he's also here in the studios with us here this afternoon. Elikem, how are you doing?
Good. I'm very fine. Good to be here.
Been ages.
Yeah, it's been a while.
All right. I'm going to start with Daniel Osabuti, but I'll be grateful for you to come a bit closer to your mic.
Okay.
For me for a conversation.
All right.
We've heard from Delex Finance's Joe Jackson.
Yeah.
Some analysis right there. Support with data. How do you react to that?
Let me say good afternoon to viewers of Metro TV this afternoon. Yes, Joe Jackson has said it all. Looking at the rippling effect of these new taxes on the performance of our firms or banks and then insurance companies and all that, at the end of the day, it's going to be passed on to the final consumer. Banks are already suffering with this domestic debt exchange program that they have gone through. They've made lots of investment, and was it last week we were told by Bank of Ghana that this exchange will definitely affect the profitability of such banks. That notwithstanding, we were told that there is something called Stability Fund, which we all know is not enough to even cushion them. Now, for government to come out with such new taxes, it means that we are going to really sink most of these companies. Now, but, right, I was surprised reading that because our sub-region, there is a benchmark of 18% of tax revenue to GDP, so we also have to embrace it. But I don't know if we've done further research to find out the number of taxes that these countries have. I don't think it should be the number of taxes, but how effective our tax system is. Do we have efficient tax system? Because you can increase the taxes, but if they are not efficient, I mean, the system is not efficient. I mean, we're in this country when we're told that some of the taxes were nuisance, for which there was no need we paying. So those taxes were scrapped. So I don't know if these taxes that have been introduced should fall within that particular bracket of nuisance taxes, because at the end of the day, it is going to have a serious toll on the average.
Should they fall in the bracket?
I don't see why we should bring in what they call it, a stabilization levy, which is going to be borne by companies that are already struggling. And then we also have 5% before tax. I mean, it's going to increase their expenses. Operational expenses will go up. And who will bear that cost? You see? So I think that we need to really be very careful the rate at which we have started imposing new taxes on the average Ghanaian. You know, we have already been slapped with new taxes in the 2023 budget. You know, VAT is now 15% from 12.5 to 15%. And then we have this e-levy tax, which has also, even though it has gone down to 1%, now there is no threshold, there is no cap. So already people are suffering, my brother. For you to roll out such a policy in this difficult time, it's not the best. It's not the best.
Elikem, before I come to you, let me tell my viewers that I also have Dr. Patrick Sumin, who's a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, joining us via Zoom, and also Manasseh Atta Buahine is government spokesperson on economy. He'll be joining us on phone for a conversation as well. Elikem, let me come to you. He's been saying that he doesn't know whether I should put these taxes in the bracket of decent taxes or not. Where do you stand on this?
Yeah, thank you, my brother. I believe very strongly that at this juncture, we have a regime that is either very wicked or just very confused with the understanding of what governance is about. Don't forget, this is a regime that some years ago, I think 2 years ago or 3, even said that we're moving from taxation to production. And to rather make this kind of U-turn to be introducing this kind of draconian taxes that seeks to further impoverish the already suffering Ghanaian out there is very pathetic. This is a government that is looking to get a windfall of 50 billion cedis as a result of a suspension of interest payments and then the domestic debt restructuring program. So how much is 4 billion compared to the 50 billion that they are earning? And so it tells you that either we have a finance minister who is self-seeking or have an absolute misunderstanding of what the whole governance system is about, or what the managing an economy is. And you see, it is one thing getting the opportunity to talk and talk so much, and then when it comes to doing, then you are doing little. If you listen to Mr. Joe Jackson, he made a very perfect analysis, and you just ask yourself, are these sane people we have elected to actually manage the affairs of this country? Which particular schools did they attend? Why have they turned themselves this way? Because it just doesn't make logic to anybody. You may even want to call persons who are lecturers or students of taxation, etc., to ask. Government is supposed to cut on its reckless expenditure. Make sure it shows the will to fight corruption. Widen the tax net properly. Seal the loopholes. But by introducing these new taxes, you are collapsing businesses. As we speak now, we are all aware that about 9 other banks risk collapse after we have spent 21 or 24 billion to embark on a so-called financial sector cleanup. And so you just cannot fathom what exactly is wrong with the very people in power. They don't seem to be getting it. It's either they are just very wicked or they are at a loss as to what to do. Amen. And so if you ask me, there is still some window of hope for them to redeem their image. That is to the president to listen to good advice. That look, what people are saying, there's wisdom in what they are saying. I have failed to listen too much. I have been very arrogant enough, but I think that I need to look at the plight of the Ghanaian on the street. I may have to say for the first time that upon careful consideration, we may not have to do this. I will not assent to this act to make them bills. But I don't see that happening either. This is a regime that cannot cut down its expenditure. This is a regime that cannot cut its coats. How do they call it? Is it the coat
according to your size?
The size of the cloth. And wants to continue to live a certain lifestyle as though all is well. And even though they come out to tell us that all is not well, they are not prepared to take any measures that will affect themselves. They must continue to live in comfort in order to solve our problems. Problems that were created by them. Problems that we thought we elected them as the messiahs, only to find out that they have rather become the mess. And so I think that the average Ghanaian out there on the street is struggling, suffering so much. And these taxes are going to impose further hardships on the Ghanaian out there, on businesses as well too. And they don't seem to get it. They don't seem to want to even listen. It's just, you have your say, we will have our way. And that is not the way to go.
All right, so I'll be speaking to Manasseh Atta Boahene, who will be joining us on phone to let us know what exactly government make of all the cries being channeled out by a lot. Guta is saying that once this actually starts rolling out, we the Ghanaians are the ones going to suffer, because when everything increases, it will come down to we the consumers. But until then, let's speak to Dr. Patrick Asumen. He is the senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. Is on Zoom to speak to us. Say good afternoon to you and welcome to Good Afternoon Ghana. Kindly unmute, let's have a conversation. And as you do that, let me ask you, now Joe Jackson has spoken with evidence, data showing that, listen, there's going to be hardship when this goes out. We've heard a senior lecturer from Accra Technical University say that it's going to be a big problem whether to join this as part of the nuisance tax or not. Elekemi is saying that government doesn't know how to cut their code according to their size. You as a lecturer, what do you make of this? Where do you stand? Dog, I still can't hear you. Kindly unmute.
I am unmuted.
All right, and as Dog tries to unmute his sound, you're still watching Good Afternoon Ghana here on Metro TV, and I'm joined in the studio by Elikem Kotoko, Deputy National Organizer for the NDC, and also Daniel Osabute, Senior Lecturer at the Accra Technical University's Business Department. We'll try and get back to Dog as he tries to unmute his sound. Dog, if you're done, can we have a conversation, Dog?
Can you hear me?
Great, I can hear you now. Kindly speak.
Okay, great. So yeah, I think it's at this time, if you look at the economic conditions that we are facing, it's clearly not ideal to have new taxes.
Wow, I mean, we've lost the sound again, Dog. We've lost your sound again, Dog. Kindly,
which is really what you have been looking for.
Okay, we lost you. We lost you as you started giving your submission. Kindly retake that for us, please.
Okay, so I was just making the point that at this stage, given the current state of the economy, new taxes, especially of the variety that doesn't broaden the tax net, is really not ideal, given the current difficulties that businesses are facing. I think when you take the general context, where we are is that we are trying to get an IMF program approved. And obviously, one of the things we have to do is to try and put our public finances in order. Now, we are obviously running a huge deficit, projected at about 7.7 for this year. So you have to ask, if you have the deficit, how do you go about closing that deficit? There's obviously the revenue measures and then the expenditure measures. Now, if you compare the 2022 budget and the 2023, you notice that the government has raised the expenditure by almost just about 50 billion. And even though the tax has gone up, the expenditure rise is quite substantial. And then if you look at these three taxes that have been introduced, put together, they are going to raise just under 4 billion. So you have to ask the question, if we slim down the expenditure increase and decided to even cut the expenditure increase by 10%, that would be about 5 billion. And that would have meant that the new taxes wouldn't have been necessary. So if you are thinking about whether there are alternatives to the specific taxes that have been introduced, the answer is yes. You could have done other things. And even if you said we are going to focus on the revenue side, because ultimately we just can't solve this problem by going on cutting government expenditures. At some point, we definitely need to bring in new sources of revenue. But you have to question whether...
Is this where we asked about consultation when it comes to issues of consultation in Ghana? Is this where we can ask this question, where consultation is done to ensure that it is a necessary tax that should be introduced?
I think one of the difficulties this government has had is not just with this, the broader area and its own conception of what consultation means. So, and here I'll take it at two levels. There's a consultation with the business stakeholders who will be directly impacted by the tax measures that have been brought in. And obviously, from the reactions we got from them, it's clear that they were not sufficiently consulted, if at all. But also, there's a broader societal consultation about where we go from here, given the difficulties we face, and what alternatives we have. And I think this is why, if the consultations have been broad enough, maybe there would have been suggestions that at this point we shouldn't introduce new or increase the taxes that we have, but undertake measures or broaden and deepen some of the measures that we've seen to try and ensure that we broaden the tax base, and then we don't overburden the few who are already in the net by the new measures that we have brought in.
No, somebody, can you hold on for me? I'll come back to you as the conversation goes on. But let me come back to the studio and have a conversation with Mr. Sabuti. Now, the issue of consultation, do you believe that if it had been done, maybe proper or other structures would have been put in place rather than introduction of these new taxes?
Yeah, I don't think consultation would have convinced people that it is the right time for us to have new taxes. No. But if you look at this government, it appears the way they go about consulting stakeholders is not too effective. Let me take you back to the decision to even restructure our domestic debts. You know, people had to come out and resist before finally government calling those who matter on roundtable conference for them to have the discussion. So consultation has not been too good, but I believe that if government had opened up and had also invited those who matter, like companies and individuals who be affected by this income tax and the excise duty and all that, somehow you realize that people would have at least had that idea as to what government intend doing. But let me also add that doing a cursory analysis of our 2022 performance as of September, it is so clear that even though we decided to revise our revenue to 96 billion, by September I think we've made only 65 billion. And the 65 billion, if you assume that, look, there is uniform revenue realization over the 12 months that we are projecting, then it's like at the end of September, we should have about 75% of our projected revenue. Because by September, we had done 49 billion out of the 74 billion that we said we're going to raise. So by September, we had only 49 billion out of 74 billion. So that tells you that it's not about the number of taxes that we have, but it is about how effective the system has been. Okay, you look at our expenditure, the projection. It was 109, the actual, as of September, was 109 billion. Okay, and if you look at it, it's about 81%, which has gone past our revenue. So it is about we being disciplined fiscally. There is no fiscal discipline. Okay, Doug rightly mentioned that if you look at 2022 budget as against 2023, a government that really was looking forward to making sure that they put in measures to reduce our debt will not be doing 61% deficit. Okay, but right, you know what is happening? I think the suspension of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, we need to take a second look at that thing. Because almost every sector is hiding behind the suspension of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. It was suspended in September 2022 because of the COVID. So for how long are we going to keep it in that? Because 2023, we are saying 7.7% deficit, all in the name of the Fiscal Responsibility Act has been suspended. So we have the pension to just spend and spend and spend. There is no discipline. So I'm appealing to Parliament. Look, take a second look at the suspension. Reinstate that particular act. It will help all of us. Because if you look at how did we come out with this act? 2015, when we went to IMF for a bailout, one of the conditions that they gave to us was that, look, try to put checks on your expenditure. So 2018, NPP government said, look, let me come out with this particular Fiscal Responsibility Act. 5% of whatever revenue that you make. I mean, it shouldn't exceed GDP, 5% of your GDP. Now, what are we seeing? 7.7, 7.4%, exceeding it. And we are hiding behind the suspension of the Fiscal Responsibility Act to overspend. So we go around and then we blame ourselves. So as Doc rightly mentioned, we could have looked at the expenditure side of the budget instead of rolling out
more
new
taxes.
Yes, that would have helped us. And I'm sure we would have even saved more on the expenditure side. Now, we're told the 2023 budget that they are going to they've cut down fuel by 30%. But have we quantified that? We need to go back and quantify it. How much have we been able to save by all those measures?
All right, now, let me go back on those who are joining us from external parts, and I'll be joined on phone by Manasseh Atta Wahine, government's spokesperson on the economy. I believe you've been following all the discussion in the studio, Manasseh. Oh, hi there. Manasseh Atta Wahine, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Bright. Can you hear me?
All right, we try and reconnect with him and see what exactly government is saying about this. I mean, I believe from Manasseh, if you can hear me, I want to believe that you've been following the discussion since it started. Can you hear me, Manasseh?
Yes, I can hear you. A very good afternoon to you.
Great. So, what is your contribution to the discussion here this afternoon, Manasseh?
Yes, indeed. I think we should commend Parliament for passing the three revenue bills, and indeed, two of them are not new. The income tax amendment bill is not new because it's only an amendment to the Income Tax Act 2015, and so as the excise duty as well. It's only an amendment to the Excise Duty Act of 2014, and so we want to commend Parliament for working together to pass
Commendation.
revenue bills, and we know how critical the revenue streams are for the forward going of the country. But I've been following conversations, and it is quite interesting the kind of points Elikem and our able professors or doctors have raised. I am scandalized that Elikem has the temerity to talk about widening the tax bracket when his own party and his own members of parliament fought against the e-levy the government brought to ensure we are able to expand the tax bracket. And I am also scandalized by the kind of allegations he's leveling against the finance minister, calling him either self-seeking or he has no idea about managing the economy. I'm not too sure where those conversations are leading, but for us as government, we believe we are in difficult times, and we have accepted this over and over and again. And we are looking at means of ensuring we are able to bridge our financing gap and also ensure we are able to raise a lot more revenues. Yes, indeed, there's been conversation about cutting down expenditure. And the government, even in 2022, mentioned the number of expenditure cuts. Salaries of government appointees being cut by 30%, then fuel allocations to MMDAs and other ministries to state-owned companies, CEOs and all of that to by 50%. Then we know of the ban of the use of V8 in country or in the various regions. And so when it comes to expenditure, we believe we've cut expenditure drastically. And we also believe it's important for governments to look within. It will be very difficult in these times to have grants or other countries coming to your aid, given the difficult financial situations across the world. And so we believe it's important for us to look within and amend the income tax bill and the excise tax bill. These two are not new. We have them already in our system, and we've only made some upward reviews in them. For the growth and sustainability, that is the only new thing government has introduced so that we can target some companies or institutions and evidence some more. And so I believe all this we are doing is in the interest of the country. We can have our political differences. We can have our political biases against a finance minister and talk evil about him like what Elikem is doing. But as government, we are not into that. We are not interested in doing give and take about personalities and all that. But we believe whatever we are doing is in the interest of the country, and very soon Ghanaians will benefit from what we are doing as well.
But Manasseh, I don't believe only politicians are agitated. I have here with me Mr. Sabuti and also Dr. Patrick Assuming from University of Ghana, who are all worried about the introduction of these taxes. Like you mentioned, income tax is no different. It's just been amended. Excise tax is no different. It's just been amended. But it looks like there's still pressure on people. And let me say I have here from a gentleman called Francis Xavier from Laura says, if I may ask, can we only generate revenue by the way of taxes? Is that the only way we can get money?
I mean, so what government does, of course, is to cut down on expenditure and also to raise revenue. We've explained it's difficult getting external funding. And so it's important for government to look within to try and see how best we could raise a lot more revenue to keep up with the infrastructural developments we are embarking on as government. And indeed, conversations around taxation are really uncomfortable because no one really is interested in paying taxes. And the moment there's a marginal increase in tax, you would find a lot of people complaining, and that's our human nature. But for government, we believe, and we are pretty much concerned about the cries of the various unions and GUTA as well. And so government's doors are open, and we would engage them further to see how best we could meet them halfway and try and create the best business avenues for them so they will have the enabling environment to thrive. We do not wish for any business to collapse or to go down. And so government is open to having further conversations. I mean, these taxes were not introduced out of the blue moon. Government had consulted most of these institutions, but indeed, consultations, you never have the buy-in. It will be very difficult for you to really draw down on the buy-in of people just because you've consulted them. No one would really agree to an increase in taxation, and so it's not surprising the kind of conversations we are having. But all these are very important, and
All right.
for us as government, we seek to ensure we are able to continue with the engagement so that in the end, businesses will be able to work and we'll have a better Ghana again.
Manasseh, I'll come back to you, but then let me quickly have Elikem react to your statement. Elikem, a quick one. Since you are making allegations against the finance minister and
you see,
that's some consultations.
as government, they have nobody to turn to. So let him stop that by saying that they are not into pointing at people and all that. Yes, you have no right. Who will you even point to in the first place? You have been elected to get things right, and you have put us in an abyss. Then you want to now be very populist to say that this is politics. Indeed, it is politics. You have used political will to destroy this country and destroy this economy, which is why we find ourselves where we are. Then he was saying they consulted. Who are the people he consulted? Can they mention 5 or 10 institutions that they consulted? You see, the arrogance of almost everybody being government spokesperson on economy with little... It's one of what has brought us here. Almost everybody is government spokesperson on economy or this or that. And so they fail to consult the proper people. Ask yourself, if any of them even try to reach out to somebody like Joe Jackson to give them a proper appreciation of what the matters are, then you are imposing these draconian hardships on the Ghanaian. And you see, the bane of the problem is that this government has failed to realize why we are here. They continue singing on the streets that we are here because of COVID-19 and because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That is actually the problem. If you don't know the cause of the problem,
is that not part?
It may be part, but it is not significantly the major reason why we are here. Corruption is the number one reason, government expenditure, mismanagement, and the excessive borrowing. So if you cannot appreciate the fact that the major reasons for which we are here is self-inflicted, but you want to blame Russia, you want to blame Putin, you want to blame COVID-19. There are countries that were affected by COVID much worse than us. They have rebounded. Then we have a mess with us continually looking at where it fell. When actually where it even fell, the reason for the fall was not just that. So, you see, if you don't appreciate the reason for your failure, the reason for the problem, you will not be able to have a solution to it. That is the reason why they are jumping from one place to the other, even trying to say that we have to tax more people, we have to do this and do that. To even say that two are just an amendment. Amendment, which is an increment, is what we are talking about. So stop treating this with velvet gloves as if we are kids. The people on the streets are suffering. They are struggling. And they are talking about the challenges that are confronting them.
Let me take a very quick break. When I come back, we are already out of time. I'll quickly do a very round discussion quickly. Have all of you give me your last submissions before I wrap up. But then, wherever you're watching from, this is Good Afternoon Ghana. Stay with us. We're off from the break with more. Welcome back. It's still Good Afternoon Ghana here on Metro TV. I have a quick one here. This one says from General Ortega. It says, right, who told the finance minister the passage of the bills will change anything? Cumulatively, between 2017 and 2020, we lost almost 48 billion Ghana cedi, according to the Auditor General. Now, the government should check its excesses and stop disturbing us with these useless and draconian economic measures. Your word has been emphasized there. So the fiscal has two sides. Why is government not focusing on the expenditure side? This government is a mistake in history. Well, that's quite harsh. Okay, Doc, I still there with us, Dr. Sumain. All right, and so Dr. Patrick Sumain was earlier with us, but I believe we lost him. those network challenges. So let me come back to the studio and take a quick response from these two gentlemen here in the studio, and you can wrap up quickly. Mr. Sabuti, you listen to him, some of his submissions.
He sounded too political. Sometimes it is very difficult to be told the truth, but I think where we are now as a country, I don't think this is the best time for us to have new taxes. Yes, he did mention that two of these taxes are not new, but the fact that they have increased the rate will definitely have negative impact on people. So it will then be seen to be new ones that have been introduced. Right. So, I would like to say that it appears because we are going to IMF, and IMF did give us our 5 action points. We have to fulfill all these points by all means. So far we've looked at the PURC increasing tariff. We have looked at the domestic debt exchange program taking place. We have looked at the GET fund, and then other fund being integrated on the Give Me system, And then the last one is what we just saw on Friday. I'll plead that we should be measured by some of the decisions that we take. We need to take a second look at the way our tax system is run. I believe for us to be very effective in our tax collection, we need to go by some of the conditions that will always help us to be effective. You are talking about fairness in our taxes, transparency. You are talking about, administrative ease and all that. We should consider all those things in ensuring that we. And then one other thing too has to do with, government should also look at tax bargain, fiscal contracts, where people who are paying tax should receive that kind of incentive. So once I'm seeing that whatever tax I'm paying is going into the same area that I'm paying the tax, nobody will ask me to pay tax because I know that I'm directly benefiting from the tax that I'm paying. I think going forward, we need to look at this tax bargain to ensure that those who pay also get back whatever is due them.
All right. Elikem, a quick one, please.
Yeah, right. It is not true that many Ghanaians out there do not like to pay tax. They would appreciate paying tax if they can see.
I think people are only worried that they pay the tax, but they don't see what the money is.
Exactly what I'm
That's
coming
what
to.
the problem really
That's what I'm
is.
coming to say. So the submission by the other gentleman, this government spokesperson on economy, is wrong. If Ghanaians can see for themselves what their tax is being used to, that their roads are actually being done, that they have the street lights functioning, that they have the community systems
and it should come with evidence
and all that, yes, it will make them feel comfortable to do so. But when you have a regime that will not listen, and the president will be flying in luxurious jets and all that kind of lifestyle, like an Arabian king, when you are actually sitting on a mess, then you don't expect the people to want to contribute more. Because many will say, you get me? And that is it. So they would prefer to avoid or not do so. So government should be responsible, should act wise enough and listen to good counsel from the plethora of expertise that are out there, that are bound, that they should look at. But if they continue to want to just listen to government spokesperson on this, government spokesperson on economy, these are people who will be biased in the submissions they will make to you. And they would only lead you into the mess we have found ourselves in.
Right. Manasseh, if you're still there, a quick one from you, then we can wrap up.
Right. So indeed, the conversations we are having are of national interest. And so when you have someone like Elikem from the NDC attacking people, you wouldn't expect us to sit down aloof. I mean, we would appreciate it if Elikem would speak to issues. I think he should elevate the conversations, speak to issues like the way our able doctors have done this afternoon. But if he continues his usual style of attacking people, then he will distort the national conversation, and we will not sit down and do for him to continue to denigrate the interests of people. And indeed, I mean, people like to pay taxes. That is true. But you see, what this government has done is to give back to the people the taxes we collect from them. That is why this government continues to boast that we have done more roads than any other government in the history of this fourth republic. When the elephant
is it the dreamland?
When the president said this in parliament, we were expecting the minority to come back with facts and figures to dispute this claim. What did we see?
Do you want to
They
listen to the
couldn't do
man?
that. It was only talk. And so when it comes to payment of taxes and even the amount we have borrowed, we have given back to the people by way of roads, by way of massive infrastructure expansion in the various senior high schools, by ensuring we pay the nurses and teacher training allowances that they cancelled, by ensuring we have our lights on. So we don't go back to the doom, so they cripple the Ghanaian economy for 5 years. And so we have evidence for every loan and every amount we have collected by way of tax.
All right. Manasseh, thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon. Good afternoon, Ghana. We are grateful. And so Manasseh Attaah-Boahene is government spokesperson on the economy, and have been here in the studio with Elikem Kotoko, Deputy National Organizer for the NDC, and Dr. Patrick Asumin, who is a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, was with us on Zoom, and also Daniel Saboti, a senior lecturer at the Accra Technical University of Business Department. He's always with us anytime we're talking about anything economy. We are grateful for that, sir. Thank you so much. From wherever you watch, this is Good Afternoon Ghana. I am Bryce Nanakwesi Amedin. Good afternoon.